Hello, I'm Dr. Craig Childress. I'm a clinical psychologist in Southern California, and I'm the developer of the ABPA pilot program for the family courts, as well as a consultant to those ABPA pilot programs. Now, in this video segment, I'm speaking to potential university collaborators who've been approached by the executive director or the clinical director for an ABPA pilot program and to explore the potential for a university collaboration with one of your faculties with the clinical intervention project. Now, what the clinical intervention project is, it's under the directorship of the executive director, and they have their clinical director. I'm not actively involved in the project. That's their project, but I'm a clinical consultant to their project. It's the structure that I developed and the protocols. So what they are bringing to you is a potential collaboration where we will provide access to our client population and to your faculty. Now, I've worked in clinical research projects in the past. If you look back at my vita, there's a 12-year span where I was working with the UCLA Aftercare Clinic, Dr. Keith Nectarline longitudinal research project on schizophrenia. And I was in charge of the data management side, all aspects of data management and information flow within the project. I had a master's degree at the time. And so I have a background in working in clinical research projects, complicated clinical research projects. And I also worked with Ernie Katz at Children's Hospital of Los Angeles on a multi-site research project, on the clinical research project on the remediation of attention deficits in kids with intrathecal cancer treatment. Then I've also worked with Jim Swanson down at UCI Child Development Center on the identification of ADHD in preschool age kids. So I have a lot of background working with clinical research projects. I know research. Even though I'm a PsyD, I've always been on the clinical side, I know research. And one of the things I'm looking at, the ABPA pilot program says this is a really nice population for research. What's going to happen is the court's going to refer over to the ABPA pilot program, and we're going to do a 6-session structured assessment that produces data on 2 instruments, the parenting practices rating scale and the diagnostic checklist for pathogenic parenting. And you have access to those, and they're linked below as well. So we're going to do the structured assessment protocol. Then if the pathology is identified, and essentially what the pathology is a cross-generational coalition with a narcissistic or borderline parent. Now, we know prevalence in the general population that narcissistic personalities are about 6% of the population diagnosable. And diagnosable borderline is also about 6%. So we have between 12 and 15% of the population who has narcissistic and borderline personality pathology. Now, we know that divorce is both rejection, which is the narcissistic vulnerability, and abandonment, which is the borderline vulnerability. So we know that about 10 to 15% of the population is going to have a real hard time with divorce. We're going to see the full manifestation of their narcissistic or borderline pathology surrounding divorce. So when we look over to the divorce domain, where do we see the 10 to 15% of the narcissistic and borderline parental pathology? Well, high conflict divorce. That's where it shows up. And so this high conflict divorce is that 10 to 15% of narcissistic and borderline pathology within the divorce system. And the reason that they're locking up, they have to transition to a healthy separated family structure from the previous intact family structure. And they can't do it because of the sadness. The narcissistic and borderline don't process sadness well, and so the grief and loss around the attachment bond loss is not going to go well for them. So we have this narcissistic borderline pathology that's twisting up the child, cross-generational coalition, using the child as a weapon against the other parent. So the ABPA pilot program is going to come in and do a structured assessment of the pathology, attachment-related pathology surrounding divorce. We're going to identify it. When it's identified, then the court has the option of then also referring into our treatment, which will be a solution-focused family therapy. Family therapy is your basic model, Mnuchin, Haley, Bowen, and solution focused. So we're going to add Berg to the focus, and it has to do with trauma and how we're working out trauma and staying solution focused rather than past focused. So that's going to be the treatment model. And during the treatment, the child is going to be getting daily behavior ratings or relationship ratings from the targeted parent. So we're going to be collecting data on the child that we'll track and we'll be using for the decision making process. Now, that's not necessarily relevant to you at this stage. If we work with one of your faculties that want to know more about what we do, we can explain it. But the point is, we have a clinical intervention research or clinical intervention project that's going to have a nicely defined population. They're going to be court referred. They're going to have 2 data documentation instruments as part of the intake, and then if they're in therapy with us, they will have a nice structured treatment protocol with data gathering throughout. And then we're going to do outcome measures, program evaluation, research types of stuff. Now, I know we can't do research. We can do QA research. We can do research associated with quality assurance. We can't do research without an informed consent, and then it begins to move into coercion and just little things that are problematic. So it's nice if we stay clean on the intervention side and work with a university collaborator, with your IRB and your faculty, to come in and do the outside research. So that's what the executive director is exploring your interest in, and your faculty, about possible access to the population moving through our clinic. It's a nice population. And so there's a variety of things. It doesn't matter what your faculty wants to do, but if they're interested in court-involved kind of stuff, there's a whole bunch of stuff they can do about the model of court-involved, because we're linking up a family therapist with an amicus attorney. That's an interesting combination. So we're getting the legal family therapist side kind of linked up, and so they can come in and study that. They can community-based interventions. They can study the personality pathology that's involved. Some nice stuff on dark triad personality that's potentially relevant, or the attachment system. I'm an attachment guy. That's my specialty practice, is ADHD and attachment. And so, oh my goodness, this is an attachment-related pathology, a child rejecting a divorce, surrounding an attachment-related event, the divorce, a separation of the attachment bond. This is so in the domain of attachment pathology that there's just a wealth of stuff that could be done in that domain. The one that would be near and dear to me is to do the adult attachment interview with the 2 parents. Oh my goodness, that would just give some amazing information. The another one that I'm a child and family therapist, and I've done ADHD assessments and school-based assessments and all that stuff for a long time. And if it was up to me, I'd want the Roberts. That's it. Ooh, my goodness. If you came in and did a separate Roberts with each one of the kids, what the Roberts is, it shows kids pictures of family situations and asks them to develop stories about the situation. And it's a standardized test. That's what makes it so good. It's a standardized test. We have norms for the stories and for the criteria of the stories that kids create about these pictures. And so if you want to know what the kids' emotional and psychological functioning is surrounding the divorce and surrounding all this conflict, oh my goodness, this would be incredibly valuable. But it doesn't matter to us. Whatever your faculty wants to come in and do, whatever protocol, run it through your IRB, MOU with the organizing agency for the ABPA pilot program, and we have a collaboration. Now, in addition, one of the other things to consider is this could also serve as a resource for your doctoral students. If your doctoral students wanted to come in and do their dissertations with our population, that's great. Run it through your IRB, get a memorandum of understanding, and we're good to go. So that's what the executive director is bringing to you, is the opportunity to develop a collaboration with one of your faculty with the ABPA pilot program. Now, we will also be looking to develop this pilot program in other jurisdictions. So we are going to have many of these pilot programs. It hopefully will become the standard of care within this high conflict forensic psychology domain of attachment-related pathology. And so with each one of these programs in any jurisdiction, we're going to be looking to develop a local university faculty collaboration. So we'd like to see a lot of sparkly little research all over the place regarding this group of people. Essentially, what we're looking at with the pathology is the transgenerational transmission of attachment trauma mediated by the personality disorder pathology of the parent, which is itself a product of that attachment trauma. So if you have faculty who might be of interest or might be interested in a collaboration, talk to the executive director and we can see if we can work something out. Now, if a faculty member does want to collaborate or is willing to collaborate, I would likely be their point person on that. So I'm a consultant to the project. I have background in clinical research, and so I could help facilitate the connection of their research to our intervention program. So thanks you for considering it, and I hope we can work something out.